So the first question is, why do I care about the work I do? So instead of answering it directly, I'll start with a story of a friend of mine, two friends who completed their 30th wedding anniversary some years ago, and like in a little fun fair like this among friends, somebody said, so do you still love your spouse? And then the answer came back, they talked to each other and they said, well, yes, but when we started out, we fell in love passionately, and that was a different love. And then when the children came around, our love was focused on the children and not so much towards each other. And when the children grew up, then we started rediscovering each other and looked at each other and asked each other, do you remember those days? And it turned out that memory of those days was still around, but it was a completely different love by this time, and we had to recommit ourselves. The point I'm trying to make is that at least when I started the journey, it was not about education. I grew up in a family of communists. My father became a communist in 1937. I grew up in what was called a commune. It was office during the day, home at night, to many people of different castes, religions, languages, and so on. During the day, lots of workers would come, and I was doing my homework on the side when I felt like doing homework, that is. And it became natural for me to think about the problems. There was no depth in it, I'm sure. And then when I grew up, I understood a little more and tried to understand a little more of what Marxism was and what the problems of revolution were, etc., etc. I participated in student politics as well. So very early in my life, first unconsciously and then more consciously, I developed this core thinking about exploitation is the root cause of things, not so much as poverty, go beyond that. And that's where I started. And I wanted to end exploitation, I just didn't know how. The only way to do it was participate in the political movement there was. And those were very tough times in Mumbai, late 60s, early 70s, turmoil. And then I figured at some point that is not something I could do. I had to come to that conclusion myself. Pursued my study. In fact, I even went to the United States to get my PhD. When I came back, India was quite different. Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister. And I was looking for answers. Where did that first passion go? When I felt so passionate about ending exploitation and all that, and I was looking for answers. And when that happened, it turned out the government of India had launched the National Literacy Mission. And what attracted me to the mission was not the problem of illiteracy, but the fact that the mission's appeal to the general population was that people can end illiteracy. It is not the governments that can end it. And they were looking for young people, unusual young people, to come into this sector of literacy. And Mr. Anil Bordia, a very remarkable bureaucrat, he still was a bureaucrat, I had fights with him. He got me one night and he said, you talk about social justice and all that, and what about the fact that you print all these pamphlets, leaflets, but 65% of whom you write these for can't even read it? And do you want these middlemen to interpret all this like in religions, to explain to people what exploitation is, what poverty is, or would you want them to become more literate? There was a big argument, but I liked that idea, and I thought that is something that could provide me the continuity in my original core commitment or thought or passion about ending exploitation, because I could not do anything else. Let's put it as a compromise candidate. And when I went into it, I went into it with open eyes, saying that, look, this is not about creating models of literacy. It was about a mass campaign where lots of people would get involved. The whole idea, I don't know, many of you look very young, but there was that song, Safdar Hashmi's Padhna Likhna Sikho Hai Mehnat Karne Walon, and so on, where the appeal was to the people themselves to rise and end this illiteracy and lack of education and so on. So that was the appeal. And when I got into it, then as I said, then the passion started changing not in quantity, but then you start looking at the deeper issues. It's not just saying literacy and illiteracy and it changes. And so it transforms, and you start looking at the deeper issues, what goes right, what goes wrong, and then you go. But my fundamental, if the answer was to be given in one word to Arun Myra, I would say, I'm in this sector because I think I want to be a part of a larger effort of ending exploitation, which I still see as the core reason for poverty. It is, of course, it's man-made. And how do you, and that exploitation is not just economic. This is something that I've come to learn, as just Karl Marx said, it's not just economic, it's much more than that. This exploitation is in different forms. We know there's gender exploitation and so on and so forth. Economic is certainly there at the core. So I think that is the main thing. What have I learned? I've learned that it's not about doing ones and twos. What I've learned is that you really go to large numbers of people, and if you level with them, don't pontificate, don't patronize people. If you want to be a part of the movement, be a part of the movement. If you do that, large numbers of people do participate, and I think many people will say that is exactly how a movement is formed. So that one core thing I've learned, that you have to, if you want to work on, and you have to work on a large scale. Otherwise, there's no point in pretending that I'm trying to end something. Whether you'll succeed or not is something completely different. And the third part is, you said, what would I like to learn? Well, lots of things to learn. But if I were to point out one thing that I've not done very well or not done at all, it is looking at the law-making and the legal side of the whole issue of education. This is something that I have neglected a lot, which is something that many of the people on the dais have done very well and successfully. That's something that I would like to do. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure we are going to meet again over the next, 36 hours. Thank you.